Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and now that it's April, we can discuss all of the books that I read in March. Two quick things before we discuss all the books that I read. The first being, I have made a Bookstagram. Honestly, I made it a couple weeks ago, but I kept forgetting to bring it up in these videos. So if you would like to follow my Bookstagram, it's linked down below, but it's Sam's Little Library. I'm not like the most consistent on there yet, trying to find a balance between that one and my other Instagram and everything else, but I'm having a lot of fun and you can stay up to date with what I'm reading and all that stuff. Secondly, we are getting a pretty bad rainstorm today, so if you can hear the wind and see that the lighting is awful in today's video, I'm sorry. Let's just move right on by that. The weather never likes to work with me on my filming days, so I digress. Let's just talk about the books I read in March. I had an amazing reading month in March. I just had a lot of fun with the things that I've read, and I read 14 books, which is the most I've ever read, possibly, and everything was like full-length books. So anyway, I had an amazing reading month. I did have one 5-star. So I will say, some of these books I felt like I read months ago. So good thing I have notes. Hopefully they help me out to figure out what the heck I read. The first book that I read in March, I think I just finished this off in March, but this is Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. I really enjoyed this one. I did end up rating it 3 stars, and I'll sort of get into that. In this book, we are following Hazel, who is in her late teens, I believe, in the 1800s, and it's getting to be like her season, and she's supposed to be marrying her cousin, I believe. But she is really interested in science and human bodies and figuring out how they work and being a surgeon. But in this time period, women weren't allowed to go to school. They were definitely not allowed to be part of the surgeon course. So she had to figure out ways to get around that and study dead bodies on her own to try and figure out what is going on. In enters Jack, who she sort of commandeers to help her to obtain these bodies to be able to study on her own. This was really interesting. I think I mentioned this before, but I have a minor in history, and this sort of time period is sort of the chunk of history that I was really intrigued about. It kind of reminded me of being in some of my history classes, reading about this. Definitely just made me remember how much I love sort of genre and time period. I will say it was definitely very graphic and gory because it was depicting various illnesses and body decomposition. I also really love how like empowering Hazel was. She definitely was very much like, this is what I want to do, I'm gonna go out and get it. And I think that's a very important quality to include in some YA books. And there was a little romance, so Hazel and Jack they made me so giddy. I love them so much. I'm very excited to read the second book in this duology. The second book that I read in March was One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. This is the third book in the One of Us is Lying trilogy, and I did not know there was going to be a third book until it released earlier this year. I think maybe the end of last year. I haven't read the other 2 books since I think the end of 2022, so it's definitely been a while, but the way that this YA mystery is written, it caught me up very quickly, and it didn't fully like recap what happened in the first 2 books, but it included little reminders or things that had happened, and I sort of was able to piece it together. The first book in this trilogy follows a group of students who are all from different social circles and all end up in detention, where one of the kids dies unexpectedly, and nothing that the media or police seem to be discovering or reporting on seems correct. So this group of students who are all in detention together came together to try and figure out what actually happened. So in this one, we're following the same group of students with a few extra characters that we had picked up in book 2. And we are following another sort of mystery conflict slash like continuation of book 2. It was definitely very, like, the other 2 books were very conclusive, but it's like a new mystery has kind of come about. I don't want to say too much because obviously it is the 3rd book. The 1st book in the series gives very much Breakfast Club vibes, and I really love the friendships and like relationships that are formed in this group. They're very tight-knit, like sort of found family. Again, this kind of reminded me that I like mystery sort of thriller books, and the sleuthing and mystery plot was a lot of fun trying to figure out what was going to happen next. I will say with this one, it didn't seem like much was happening. I don't know that this book was necessarily necessary for the series, but Karen M. McManus does write fairly short chapters, all roughly around 10 pages, that just wanted you to keep reading. So overall, very good, a fun little YA mystery. I would definitely recommend this series and Karen M. McManus in general if you sort of like that genre. I think she's a great author, but I rated this one 3 stars. Okay, so I take it back. I did read one novella. I read Puck Shy by Kayla Grassi. This is the 2nd book in a duology. I can't remember what it's called. I ended up rating this one 2 stars. I also didn't love the first one, and I think Kayla Grassi is just not for me. This one, it just gave me a big ick. So we're following the brother to the male main character in the 1st book and the sister to the female main character in the 2nd book. I don't think there's anything like inherently bad about that. It just felt weird because they're also both identical twins. So that just gave me a huge ick. I'm not gonna lie. The way that things were described was kind of crude or vulgar, sort of unnecessarily. And it's not that, I don't know, it's so weird because it's like the same words are being used in other books in other ways in books that I love, but just like the way that words can be strung together, just reading is wild, y'all. I will say the setting was interesting. Our 2 main characters meet at like a sex club sort of thing, like a BDSM sort of club thing. It's like a one night stand, and then they end up like meeting later. Obviously because their siblings are together. And then I think like something happens and they end up like working together or something. Honestly, I don't remember much about this. I think I just tried to like totally block it from my memory. I feel like it was just trying to be too much. It was like 200 pages and it was trying to be like a full length romance novel with like the ups and downs and everything. And like the plot was cute, but also just, it was a little strange for me. So this was not my favorite. I don't think I will be picking up this author again. I haven't liked either book so far. So the next book that I read in March, I'm a little nervous to talk about because I feel like this book got a lot of hate. But I read Never by Jessa Hastings. Actually, Buddy read this with Emily. I loved this book. I ended up rating it like 4.5 stars, I think. I think I might have had a better experience with this than some other people because I had heard some reviews about it and I sort of knew what I was getting into. Now, I will say I did pre-order this book, so this is the 1st edition original print, so there are definitely some quotes in here that, but I know that Jessa has come out with an apology and has rewritten some of the lines and descriptions, though I'm not 100% sure exactly what has been changed. Jessa's writing is nothing that I have ever read before, and I am obsessed. Her writing is very lyrical and there were so many times that I like wanted to highlight things and tab things in here, but I'm just like not at that place with my books yet. So in this book, essentially we are following Daphne, who is just about to turn 18 and is part of the Darling family, and all of the women in her family at I think the age of 13 are supposed to be taken to Neverland by Peter Pan, and Daphne is almost 18. Peter Pan still hasn't come yet until he does and takes her to Neverland. And she's grown up hearing these stories and hearing the like attachment that her mom and grandmothers have to their time with Peter Pan. So she has all these expectations of what Neverland is going to be like. And it's not like that. It's a very interesting take on the Peter Pan story. And I know that this is like directly inspired by J.M. Barrie. It's not inspired by like the Disney rendition of it at all, which I do have plans to read the original J.M. Barrie version because of all of the Peter Pan retellings that I read this month, which I will get to. But I love this. I will say all of the characters are messy. All of the characters are fairly unlikable. They do questionable things, they make questionable choices, but honestly, they're so human. It makes a lot of sense for the age that they are, sort of like this in-between transitional period where you're 17 and you're still young and still want to hold on to your youth, but you're also almost 18 years old. You're almost legally an adult and you have to start making these life decisions and try to like shift away from that. And I think this Jessa just did a really good job at showcasing that. I don't know what else to say about this. I am already wanting to reread this book. I wanted to reread it as soon as I finished it. It just made me think. Messy, problematic characters, but they feel real. Also the setting, like Neverland, the descriptions, beautiful. The next book that I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up only rating this 3 stars. I was really looking forward to this. I had heard a lot of great reviews about this book and it just didn't hit for me. We are following Misery, who is a vampire, and her father like strikes up a deal with the werewolves to have Misery and like the head alpha werewolf get into a marriage so that there's some alliance between their two groups. But there's also some like underlying questionable acts going on in like the werewolf territory, and also Misery's best friend is missing, so Misery is trying to like figure out where she went. And that was kind of strange. Like they were trying to find her, but also like not. Like it was just kind of like, oh, we'll just throw this in and just have something to like move the plot forward. But the banter was good, and Ali included some science sprinklings in this one as well, similar to all of her other STEM romances. Misery is like a computer science whiz or something, and she can like hack into computers. So that was the like STEM piece of it, I guess. I feel like overall, like I said, the plot was really slow and it wasn't like nothing was really happening. And the reveal was very lackluster. It was kind of like, oh, of course that's who did it, or like, of course that's why they took her friend. The romance was okay. There was definitely parts that I really liked and was like smiling and giggly and having a great time. But at the same time, like felt kind of rushed. Like they didn't like each other, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's definitely not my favorite Ali Hazelwood book that I've read, and I'm glad that I didn't purchase it. The next few books were in my swapping my phone pickups for pages vlog. So the first book I read was Caraval, and I rated this 3 stars. This was good. I felt like the setting was very reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland. It was very whimsical. we are following, well, I don't remember what our main character's name is, but we're following our main character, and she has like a bad home life and wants to be invited to Caraval, which is this like whimsical carnival sort of scavenger hunt type event that is put on. Sort of like she wants to go for her sister, but her sister is taken and is sort of part of this year's Caraval event. And we're just like following our main character along, trying to find her sister and win Caraval. Scarlett. Her name is Scarlett. I found her to be kind of annoying. She very much just kind of followed what other people told her to do and didn't really make any decisions for herself. And when she finally did make a decision for herself, she made poor decisions and like just made a whole mess of everything. It's like, if you like actually. So I didn't love her. I didn't really love any of the other characters. I didn't really trust anyone. I didn't trust the plot, but I think that was kind of the point where when she first arrives to Caraval, they specifically tell you things in Caraval may not be as they seem, so don't necessarily trust everything at face value, and she trusts everything at face value. So it's just not my favorite. I will continue the series because I do want to read this trilogy before I read Once Upon a Broken Heart. And like, it was good, but it just wasn't great. Next, I read Powerless by Elsie Silver. This is book 3 in the Chestnut Springs series. One of my favorite series now. In this one, we are following Jasper and Sloane. Jasper is sort of like an honorary Eton member. He was taken in as a young child when he was going through a very, very rough time. And he's also a famous hockey player. And we're also following Sloane, who is the Eaton's cousin and Jasper's best friend, and is also a ballerina. So we start off at Sloane's wedding, where she finds some information about her fiance and says, no, like, I can't marry this guy, he's awful. And Jasper spirits her off, takes her away, and we sort of follow them together. Jasper and Sloane are also best friends. We get some clips into their past together. So I love the Eaton family. I love the Chestnut Springs setting, small town, cowboy hee-haw romance. Banter is great. Jasper is really funny, and like his inner monologue, like some of the things that he said was just great. Jasper has a very traumatic childhood and past. This book was a lot of pain. Like, this book hurt a lot. And sort of just kind of like wedged a little piece of itself into my heart. I will say it was a little bit annoying because it was like unrequited love for both parties for like their entire life. And as they were younger, I can understand that there is like a little bit of an age difference between them. But at the age that they are at, like, y'all should have just had a conversation and it would have been fine. Because a lot of the times there was moments that was like, oh, some like sexual thought or description of the other person, and then immediately saying, no, but like, we're just friends. The other person doesn't see me like that. And it's like, yes, they do. Just have a conversation. Just like figure your stuff out. I did rate it 4 stars. Definitely my least favorite so far in the series, but overall I had a great time and I cannot wait to continue the series and read more. The next book that I read was Pucking Wild. I ended up rating this 4 stars. Again, I read this in my reading vlog. I really love the characters in this one. I really need to start writing down the main characters' names. We're following Tess, who is the best friend to our female main character from the first books in the series, as well as Ryan, who is on the same hockey team as the guys in the rest of the series. And Tess is like 10 years older than Ryan is. She's going through divorce, trying to like separate from her crappy ex, and something happens where she finds herself in Florida for a period of time, and sort of follows Tess trying to find herself, and her and Ryan sort of forced into situation together, and just them like figuring stuff out together and separately. This is an awful description of what this book is. I love them together. They have the best banter. You can really feel their connection between the two of them. And I just really love how Emily Rath like entwined their stories together. I love them so much. And I really love this series. It's just so much fun. It's very, like, I can only describe it as like kinky. It's very spicy. So definitely keep that in mind. The next book that I read in March was Flock by Kate Stewart. 3 stars. Moving on. Just kidding. I don't know how to describe this book. I have seen a few people talk about it, and no one has really said what it's about. And I also don't know what to tell you. So we're following Cecilia, who has to go and live with her father for a year, who she hasn't seen in many years, and he's very rich in this small town. So she has to live with him in order to get her inheritance, and she needs to take care of her mother. So this is like the only way that she can sort of help her mom out. And she meets Sean and his group of friends, and we're just kind of following her live in her life, and it just sort of goes from there. This is a dark romance. It's not dark how like I think of dark romance when I think of like the dark romance genre. It's very much emotionally traumatic. I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I thought there was going to be more. It was good. I am very intrigued to continue this trilogy because I think that it is going to get very interesting after this book, but I will say I thought there was going to be more. Okay, so book number 10, I think, is The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. This is like a 200-page Peter Pan dark romance retelling. I really liked this. This was so much fun. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I found this to be a very interesting take on the Peter Pan story, again inspired by the original by J.M. Barrie. And again, I buddy read this with Emily. So in this one, we are following Winnie, who is like 18. Again, she is part of the Darling family, where every woman is taken by Peter Pan on their 18th birthday, I think. But this one is like, Neverland is very traumatic. All of the Darling women come home terrified and thoroughly traumatized. We're following Winnie, who gets taken by Peter Pan, and this is very much dark romance, very, very spicy, very much like, I don't have any words today, apparently. I found the magic, we're just gonna move right on by. I really enjoy the magic system in this one. It's very interesting. The different like Lost Boys and Fae and different magical creatures are a lot of fun, and it's very intriguing about how Neverland is ruled. I was very intrigued by all of our characters. I wanted to know like their background and sort of what their motivations were. And overall, I'm just having a ton of fun with this series. The next book that I read was Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is a Persephone and Hades retelling, but this one was really interesting. This one was more of like a modern day take where there's not necessarily powers or a magic system, but it's more of like a government, like business hierarchy. I really loved the characters, and I felt like the plot was very minimal, so it was definitely more character focused. Persephone is to be wed to Zeus, and she is kind of blindsided by this proposal and sort of freaks herself out. Like, Zeus has very bad reputation with what he has done to his Hera position, so his wife. And Persephone runs and she ends up with Hades and sort of like learns about him and his like section of the city, and story just kind of goes from there. The spice in this book was great. Again, this is like a dark romance, a lot of kinky like BDSM sort of spicy tropes in here, so keep that in mind. But I really like this. I really like all the characters, and I'm very intrigued to continue this series and read the rest of them. Next, for my 5-star read of the month, I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This was so much fun. We're following Araya, who is a human that was taken in by the like leader of the vampires and was trained by him to be able to survive in the vampire area. But she's also seen that she uses her power or her strength to protect humans in the human territory and kill vampires who are trying to attack helpless humans. And there is also a sort of trial that takes place where a bunch of vampires come and join this trial in order to have a wish granted from the goddess Nyaxia. I love the main character. I thought she was just amazing. She was really strong and powerful, and like she had to be. She was a human in vampire territory. I thought the world and sort of like the politics system was very interesting. There are multiple different houses of vampires, but I feel like we didn't really get to learn about each individual house that much, or sort of any of the different types of vampires, I guess. And I do wish that we got more of that, though I suspect that we will be getting more of that in the next book. Some of this was definitely very predictable. It has a lot of the like standard fantasy tropes in it, I guess. But I still had an amazing time, and the way that the tropes were done was done really well and sort of also had an additional twist that you didn't necessarily see coming. And I just thought it was a lot of fun. I really loved Raya. I really loved Rain. It was so funny. The banter was so good. The connection was so good. I cannot wait to continue this series and read the next one. The next book that I read this month was a reread, and I also read it on audio. So that was A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. I rated this 3 stars, I think for the second time. I really enjoyed this. I will say I listened to this at the same time as Neon Gods, so that was a little bit confusing, but it's an interesting take on the myth as well. We're following Persephone, who is a goddess, but her mother lets her go to school in New Rome with the humans, and I guess other gods are there as well. But she is disguised herself as human because nobody knows that Persephone exists, and she wants to be a journalist for this news article when she finds herself in Hades' club and sort of like finds herself in a deal with him. I just found Persephone to be really annoying and naive. She believes everyone else except for Hades when he's the only one that has like given her any proof of anything. Also, I can't remember when I read this book for the first time. I don't think I was posting on YouTube, but I think I said that this wasn't spicy, and I don't know what I was on. Maybe I was reading, like, I just read a Tessa Bailey Killer Vacation or something. But there's a lot of spice in this book. And listening to that on audio, oh boy. I would be sitting in the car and I would get to like a red light, and if it was in a part that was like a spicy part of the book, I had to turn my volume down because I thought everyone else could hear me listening to this. And I don't know that it was necessarily the spice itself. I just didn't love the narrator of this one. The accents that she did, very odd and made me giggle, but also the voice that she used for Persephone was very breathy, and with Persephone as being the main character, and listening to the spicy scenes in Persephone's voice was extra breathy, and it was just like, let's just read this normally. Let's not add this like breathy flair into this because I cannot. I did discover that this whole series is on Kindle Unlimited now, so I'm definitely going to try and continue in that format. This also has the virginity trope in it, which is very understandable for Persephone's history and background and everything. But the way that it was discussed was just like, ugh, like, whatever. Like, let's just, that didn't need to be said. So, I don't know. I didn't love this one, but I'm willing to give it the second chance and continue the series now that I can get them all easily. And here we've arrived at the very last book. The last book that I read this month was The Dark One by Nikki St. Crow. This is the second book in the Vicious Lost Boys series. I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars. I really like this one. I like this one more than book one. I felt like we dove deeper into the characters. It was significantly more spicy than the first book, so definitely keep that in mind. Again, very dark themes. But I feel like we just got more reveals and just learned more about the world and the background of different characters, that it was just a lot more interesting to me. I will say there was some decisions that some of the characters were making, sort of the like 2/3 point of the book, that I didn't agree with. It was kind of like dragging, but the end definitely picked up for that. I'm very intrigued to continue the series. That is everything for today's video. Let me know down below what your favorite book was from March. I would love to chat with you, or let me know if you have read any of these books. Let me know what you thought. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!